Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video, and today we're going to be doing a discussion and a talk about the latest Spider-Man film, No Way Home. So I'll be giving a review, my overall thoughts and impressions, but it's going to be like a three-stage act. I want to start off talking about my relationship and sort of context with Spider-Man. Like, it's not just that I'm a casual fan of Spider-Man from the MCU standpoint. Then I'll talk about the discussion of the film, and then it'll be like the third part will be discussing potential things that might happen in the future. There will be spoilers within this talk of No Way Home because it's been out long enough now that people had the chance to see it. So for me, Spider-Man's been a massive part of my life for as long as I can remember. As long as I can remember, there's been Spider-Man somewhere within my life. Growing up as a small child, as a still small adult, I remember my first glimpses and remembrance of Spider-Man was I had these Ladybird superhero books when I was a kid. Ladybird are a children's book publisher over here in the UK, and I distinctly remember having a Superman book, a Batman book, and two Spider-Man books. I remember the Superman book because I used to trace the Superman logo quite a lot and put it on things. Spider-Man, I'd try and draw him as well. Just tracing, but also like drawing him and drawing the web, and I'd be trying to do face paint on myself, things. And so I do have distinct memories of that. But also, with growing up in the 90s, we got the Spider-Man cartoon, the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon, which was at the time like unbelievably brilliant. Like, we had the X-Men cartoon as well. We also had the animated Batman cartoon, but I remember the Spider-Man one being pretty dark at times. Like, going back and watching it now, there's some story arcs and story moments that as a kid just went over me. I just wanted to watch Spider-Man beat people up and do things, but there's also a lot of complexity to that character for a 90s cartoon character. So I always remember that. I also remember playing the games on the Mega Drive and working my way through games on the original PlayStation 2, and that's when we'd start to get into the era of the first set of films. So for me, the first film came out in 2002, but the promos for it started in 2001, and I distinctly remember that first teaser we got with Spider-Man swinging through New York, I think chasing a helicopter full of bad guys and catching that helicopter in between the two towers. Like, I distinctly remember that first trailer because we didn't get to see too much of Spider-Man until towards the end. It were really teasing, as a teaser should be, but I just remember it looking amazing and just thinking, I can't believe we're going to be seeing Spider-Man on film. Like, at the time, we were just starting to get the X-Men films, the Hugh Jackman series of X-Men films with Halle Berry and James Marsden and that lot. So it was very in the infancy of the sort of rebirth of the superhero film genre. Also at the time, I started art college, so I was starting to go out from home, travelling from home and going into the city, into the big city of Leeds, to go to art college. And while there, meeting people of like-mindedness, we don't get that in high school. You get some nerdy people, but there I was studying graphic design and advertising, and I remember the first couple of weeks we were just talking about things we were interested in, and we all started to just go to cinemas together, and a few of us would walk towards to get the bus home in a similar place, and we had a big Forbidden Planet in Leeds at the time. My bus was over the road, so if I ever missed the bus and if it were raining or just bad weather, I'd always go into Forbidden Planet, but I never really bought anything. I don't know why, but at the time when I was starting college, I had a part-time job, so I had disposable income, and that's when I started to collect comics. And just about that time, Marvel started to publish the Ultimate Spider-Man series. So when I first started collecting these, they were already on volume 2, so I bought these two as a catch-up, and I then collected from, I think this is issue 13 onwards, I think. Yeah, these are first 13 issues, and I started collecting from there on. So for me, that was my first dive into comic books, and I'd collect comics for the next 12 to 15 years. Don't really collect them now. I still keep in touch with like what's going on in the world. I just don't buy them anymore. I read and do different things, but being able to dive into the story when the film's coming out just made the initial film, the Tobey Maguire series, Sam Raimi's, mean even more to me. Like, I was learning about graphic design, learning about editing, learning about compositions and all these things that I'd never thought of before, and then seeing them in film, like while my mind's learning all this new stuff. It was a really formidable time for me as someone who would go into video production and design as a job for the past nearly 15 years now. So seeing those films meant a lot to me. So coming up to going to see No Way Home, knowing the rumours that we've heard about of what might happen, you know, spoiler wise, we'd heard the rumours for about a couple of years now, that the other two, Tobey and Andrew Garfield, were going to be in the film. And I thought, well, if they are, because they teased it a lot, they hadn't shown much. Actually, they hadn't teased them being in it at all. They've done a really good job of hiding it. I thought I'd go back and watch the series from the beginning. So Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, 2 and 3, Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, and then the Tom Holland appearances starting at Civil War, into Homecoming, into Far From Home, and then, you know, I think it was like a week later I went to go see No Way Home. So for me, looking back on some of these films, it's hard to like critique and look at that first series badly, because it holds a dear place in my heart. When I first started college, I remember one day, because my mum, and I lived at home with parents, my mum knew I was buying comics and collecting comics at the time, and one day I just came home from college. I'd only been there a few months, and there were just a massive poster tube on my bed. And my mum's not one to just go randomly buy someone gifts, but she'd obviously been in town that day, walked past Forbidden Planet to get the bus, and then seen it in the window, the original teaser poster for Spider-Man, which I'll put around here, where Spider-Man's holding on to the side of, I think it might be the Chrysler Building, something like that. Might not be actually, because the Chrysler Building's in the bottom corner. I'm just looking at it because it's right there. It's on the top of my hallway, and that I remember opening that tube and rolling it out and seeing that poster. And we know what had happened in the world by then. That teaser poster were only in cinemas, I think maybe like a couple of weeks before it got taken down. This poster that I've got was from an American cinemas. The Forbidden Planet had like a few of them, and I remember seeing it all the time, and I must have spoke about it, seeing it, because whenever you'd walk in the old Forbidden Planet in Leeds, you'd have the bottom section where some of the toys and board games are, then you'd go up some stairs, and that's where all the comics and manga and some of the collectible figures and everything were. But on the way up the stairs, on the pillar, that's where the Spider-Man poster would be, and I'd see it all the time. So I must have spoke about it at home. But having that poster in hand, and that would go above my bed and stay there until I moved out and got my own house. And it's still a prominent spot within my house now, and it will be forever because it's a brilliant poster. So looking back on those films, yes, they are cheesy and they do feel of that time, but I like that time. It's a really comforting time to go back and watch films from like the early 2000s, like the Lord of the Rings series. Like, there's just something really warm, homely and comfy about watching those first Spider-Man films. So yes, that first, the third one was a bit wonky in places, and they might have put too much into it. But going back and rewatching it now, it holds up. The CGI is still fantastic. The CGI for Sandman, brilliant. The CGI for Venom, really good. Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, maybe not so much. Eddie Brock to me is what I remember from the comics and from the cartoon, like a more of a burly bust sort of football player, you know, jock type style. Not someone who's just a counterpart to Peter doing something different. But I loved those Tobey Maguire films. I thought he looked great. His chemistry with everyone was great. Even at the time, I thought they all looked kind of old to be playing the roles they were, especially in the first film. But it's kind of like what Americans did back then. They'd just cast people that were within a certain 10 years of potentially being that age. So I really love those films. I love the build-up that we got with the different characters, and how it all felt like it just fit within like a 10-year time frame of him learning the powers, and then him, which there were teasers of going into the fourth film, but him sort of going his own way towards the end of the third one. And not so long after the end of after the third film, we'd heard rumblings that there were going to be a fourth film with Vulture and maybe Craven and other things like that. Then it just died. And then 5 years later, we got the Andrew Garfield series, which felt more like these books that I read, the Ultimate series. So I'd read the Ultimate series all the way up until the death of Peter Parker, and Ultimatum, which was like kind of the death of the Ultimate Universe, which then got twisted into the 616 universe. Trying to keep up with what Marvel do is sometimes it's not worth it. So most of the way through the Ultimate series, I also jumped over to the main universe, the 616, and started collecting Amazing Spider-Man, and I have a run from around 550 from the start of Brand New Day to 700 and the beginning of like Superior Spider-Man. So I've got like a 200-ish run of comics, all mostly in this box here, just for proof. Just pull a couple out. So here, got Amazing Spider-Man 665 running all the way to the end. Where's 700? 700. So special collectible ones. I've got many random collector things, and it was the days of buying different. There'd always be 1 or 2 covers. These days there's like 10 covers for special things, but now back then it was only a couple, like maybe 5 at most. So I was still collecting comics back when the Amazing Spider-Man stuff came out. So for me, that felt more inclined with the stories that I'd been reading. The Tobey Maguire series kind of felt like the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby style, where he is like a proper true nerd. He's got the glasses, he's got the side part in, it doesn't quite get the girl, his humour's a bit, all over the place, and whereas the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield felt more like the Peter that I read. I think he even sort of looks like him. I'll find a picture straight away where he's still geeky looking, but he's also sort of like a bit more of a sort of an outcast rather than your straight up nerdy geek, and that's what we got in the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. I thought that his portrayal of Peter was great because he was sort of a bit more of a social outcast and a bit quiet and a bit distant, rather than just someone who was just an outright geek and a nerd. And you could see straight away with his interactions with people that he knew them, he got along with them. It's not like they didn't know who he was, or he was bullied in some ways. Sometimes it felt like his interaction with Flash felt like some sort of joking with each other, more than something that is just a straight up bully, even though Flash, he is. But that first Amazing Spider-Man film, I thought was great. The suit was something very distinct and very different, and it took a while for me to like that suit. But now looking back on it and seeing that it does have that slight homemade feel, even though the texture of the suit, I've always compared it to like a basketball. I always look at that suit and think in my head how a basketball would feel, and that's how I think the suit would be. But I do like it. I thought the suit for Amazing Spider-Man 2 was probably the most perfect and comic book looking suit we got. We got the bigger eyes. We also got the webbing sort of back. So it was a mix of the Tobey Maguire suit with more of a modern day twist, where it sort of, the colours popped more. It was more of a red, and the blue sort of stood out more, whereas it was slightly more navy and muted in the Tobey Maguire series. But that second film, it's a very wonky one. I'd say it's probably more wonky than Spider-Man 3, mostly because I just don't think some of the character arcs work very well. I don't think the inclusion of the Russian Rhino character is handled great at all. It feels like it's thrown in at the beginning of the end as like a sort of a bookmark or a teaser towards what they were going to try to plan next, which was a Sinister Six film. There was a lot of Easter eggs thrown out this film for Sinister Six, but I enjoyed the Goblin storyline. More of the Hobgoblin by this point. I didn't really like the Elektra storyline. I think Jamie Foxx is pretty much a one-note character, so to see him try to play like a weird nerdy character just felt like someone not really making an effort. It felt like him trying to be a caricature rather than playing a character. It was always weird. And the Elektra character, like, it looked fine, like the visuals looked fine, but it just didn't do much. Like, it was just a bit too weird at times, like that final fight scene in that massive electric array area. It was just weird, and it looked like something from a video game. But I loved Andrew's interactions with Emma Stone, Gwen Stacy. I thought their chemistry throughout those two films was just fantastic. You can see why they dated in real life, because the chemistry is just oozing off the screen. And I thought Emma Stone was a perfect Gwen Stacy. I thought she was fantastic. And that was the first time we'd seen someone who wasn't a love interest other than Mary Jane. We'd seen it in the TV show. I think we even got Black Cat and Gwen Stacy in the cartoon. Also, obviously in the comics we got more. But it was nice that they went in a different departure and tried to build it from the framework from the beginning, where Gwen Stacy is his original love before he meets MJ and all the madness that goes on with them two. So it was nice that we got that. And they tried to pay tribute to like how she dies in the comics, but it didn't quite hit as hard as reading it in the comics. I remember I've gone back and read the original stuff. I've got quite a lot of the Marvel Masterworks Spider-Man stuff, going back and reading those Stan Lee, Steve Ditko runs, which they do feel of the time, but I just love them. I think they're brilliant. So then after Spider-Man 2, literally there wasn't much speculation at all about them doing a third film. From what I remember, it feels like it was a quick turnaround after that film came out to them saying, yeah, we're going to recast. We've got a deal with Marvel, Disney now, and we're gonna recast and pull into the MCU. Whereas I kind of thought that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man would have worked quite well. We'll discuss this later, why I think this. But in 2016, we got the first appearance of Tom Holland as Spider-Man this time, going all the way back to the beginning again, and we've got another young person playing a high school Peter Parker. By this time, I'm kind of burnt out on that storyline, but I did enjoy his interactions with Robert Downey Jr. in that film, where we first meet him in the apartment where he's now living with Aunt May, a young Aunt May, very reminiscent from the Ultimate Spider-Man run. And we see like his interactions with Tony Stark, where he's found footage of a young Spiderling, doing stuff in the city in his homemade sort of hoodie with goggles, and he was impressed that he's made his own tech and made his own web. But then he gives him a suit, pulls him over to Germany to have that big fight scene within Civil War. And I kind of like that first suit. I like this fuzzy felt look that it had to it, and the mechanical eyes. I think they were a really good introduction to it. I do think Tom Holland did a good job of Peter Parker there. But by this time, I was kind of ready for like an older Peter, and I did like Andrew Garfield, and I thought he could have worked really well moving into that world. But not long after Civil War, I think it might have been the same year, 2016, 2017, we got the first of the SpiderMan Trilogy starring Tom Holland, which was Homecoming. Wasn't entirely impressed with this film. I thought I do think they've given this Peter Parker too much too soon. It feels like they've tried to speed up where the character is and what they do with the character. Maybe they're trying to age him up quickly because Tom's in his mid-20s now. But it just doesn't. It just feels like we got the mechanical suit too soon. Well, that came just after this film in Infinity War, I think. But in Homecoming, it was a lot of him being Spider-Man and trying to do the whole balance of social life, as well as being a regular teenager and trying to hide his identity. But it just felt like treading old ground. Even though we got some new sort of takes on characters. We got Ned Leeds, which is very much like the character of Gonk from the Ultimate line, as the sort of buddy sidekick. And then we got Liz in the first film as the love interest. But finally we got a new villain in the Vulture, Michael Keaton's Vulture, which I thought was really well done. The fact that it wasn't in the comics and cartoons and stuff, he's always been like an old man, like in his 60s or 70s. But this time we got a guy in his probably 60s, late 50s, probably 60s, who was using dropped tech from the original Avengers and things that had happened and come to Earth because of the Avengers and all the things that have happened since then. So I like the fact that he built this stuff from reclaimed things, so it had a nice sort of grungy, somewhat out of world look to it. But I do like that sort of storyline of like that the underground would be run by trying to weaponize and build things off of all this alien tech and trying to, the black market deals and stuff. So I did kind of like that. But as I said, I think after watching, growing up watching the Sam Raimi stuff and then the Amazing Spider-Man stuff, I've seen enough sort of high school Peter Parker. And I think a lot of people might have thought that. I think Marvel jumped the gun doing it a couple of times now. Then we got him in Infinity War, where he got sent to space and he got given the Iron Spider suit, which that took decades to appear in the Spider-Man comics. I think it might be in the Spider-Man run I've got, might be part of the original Civil War, which in the comics looked brilliant, and it was great seeing these suits that he would get over time, but it would also be based off of villains and stuff that he needed to redo and rebuild suits, which is what you see in the video games now. You get all these different suits, like he's got a suit that helps him fight against people with electricity, or like bulkier, heavy suits to fight against sort of stronger opponents. Like he's always thinking ahead because he's got that scientific mind. Whereas the films that we got with Tom Holland, it felt like he was always given stuff from Tony Stark. It never felt like he earned these new things he was given. It was sort of, he'd finished that sort of training wheels program that they'd put into the suit, because the suit even had his own hood and AI and and Iron Man type stuff, which that's never really been Spider-Man's gig. So within Infinity War, moving into Far From Home, it just feels like this Spider-Man, even though he's only been around doing his Spider-Man thing for like maybe 2 years at most within the timeline of the Marvel world, it feels like he's where the character is, 10 to 15 years into his legacy at this point, after college, MJ and all that stuff. So moving into Far From Home was the sort of like, it's the decompression of Spider-Man. He's just done all this stuff, he's been at space, seen all these things. People have, the snap had happened by then, because we saw a lot of tributes to Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, and it was sort of him sort of, I guess, kind of PTSD, sort of trying not to relive those things and go through stuff, and just wanting to just be a normal person, which is understandable, which is why I do feel that the Marvel had thrown far too much at this Spider-Man as quick as possible. And rewatching this film, I had to watch it in 2 parts just because it bored me, and the film would be on in the background, but I'd be picking up my phone, going through Instagram, going through Twitter, texting people, looking at stuff, going to the kitchen to get some food, doing other things, and it was just on in the background. And by the time I'd sat down and started to pay attention to it, it was towards the end. It's like, rewind it, come back another day, and it just didn't hold my attention. I like the fact that we got Mysterio, so for 2 films now, we've got new characters and new villains. And I like the fact that this new Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio, was sort of a tech version rather than a magician. What you'd see in the comics and video games and cartoons, it was more of a tech. And I kind of like that as someone who's done sort of visual effects and can do visual effects, After Effects and 3D modelling and that kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay, this is different, and I kind of like the roll and twisted take with that. But it just felt like another film with Spider-Man being given too much. He's working alongside S.H.I.E.L.D. and doing stuff at night in his dark suit. But then, I don't know. It just feels like it's too much too soon. And it just didn't hold my attention. When it wasn't the Spider-Man scenes and it was all just about Peter wanting to spend time with MJ, this new version of MJ, I just don't believe their chemistry. Because this MJ, the Zendaya MJ, to me, if I was in high school, I wouldn't pay her any attention, because she just seems really standoffish and really cold and sort of a bit too sarcastic, a bit too much of a know-it-all, and just a bit too abrasive, that I'd be like, no matter how pretty you are, she's pretty, she's cute, but she doesn't blow me away. I won't be like, oh, wow, she's amazing. And that gets past the fact that character-wise and personality-wise, she's pretty trash. Like, don't bother me. So I never believed their interactions. It's sort of just like, Are you just clinging to like any girl that pays you any attention? That's what it felt like. So from Far From Home, didn't really hold out much hope when it was coming to No Way Home. But after hearing what we might get with the other guys coming back into the film, I kind of thought, I'm probably going to have to go see this. I was sat on the fence for a while. I did see it opening week, within the first week. And for me, it's the best Disney Marvel film we've got with Spider-Man so far. I like it. It just feels more of... it just feels like it's had influence from the other two films. You could say that it suffers from like Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 syndrome, where it's got an awful lot going for it. So a brief overview of the film is, it starts off with, right at the end, it starts off pretty much, you could watch Far From Home and No Way Home back to back, because they literally just start right after each other. So the world has just found out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because Mysterio sent a video into the Daily Bugle, which is now more of an online fake news website. You know, you got the joke, but they rammed the joke home a bit too much of who they were trying to portray J. Jonah Jameson against. It's sort of like, we get it. You know, American humour's not that great. They're trying to shove it home, and if you don't get it, they'll just keep doing it. It's like, we get it. He just broadcast to the world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he's doing his... I think he just dropped MJ off on the ground right at the end of Far From Home, saying goodbye, and he was going to, you know, swing off and go do his thing. This all happens. MJ starts to have people gather around her and get quite pushy and a little bit rude towards her straight away. I don't know how people know that. People going, "You're Spider-Man's girlfriend, aren't you?" It's like, how do you know that? Other than the fact that they might have just seen him drop her on the floor, but you couldn't assume that. So Spider-Man comes back down, pushes a few people out of the way, just before it looks like this really big fat girl's going to punch someone because she's got anger... Well, New Yorker, she's got anger issues. Sweeps her off, swings her away, and then Ned calls him. Everything starts to just unravel quickly. Helicopters start to fly around, follow him around, follows him back to his apartment, where he has to sort of tell Aunt May and Happy's there what's happening and what's going on. And it just... The first arc of the film is about that kind of unravel of like, what do we do? Like, he tries to think that maybe the dust might settle quite quickly, or people might move on, but they know that they can't stay where they are because there's police cameras around, there's things being thrown through the windows. We also get a point where Spider-Man has a lawyer come in to talk to him, to sort of give him some advice, and that lawyer's Matt Murdock, the Charlie Cox version from the Netflix series, which I'm really happy for, because them Netflix shows, especially, I'd say, all three seasons of Daredevil, fantastic. The first two are probably the best things Marvel's ever created. The first season of The Punisher is exquisite. The second season, maybe not so much, probably because it got cancelled halfway through because Disney moved everything away. But seeing Matt Murdock back within the MCU, brilliant. So Spidey's trying to just... Well, Tom Holland, Spidey, he's trying to just live a normal life at this point, and he's applying for university and college with his friends. They all want to go together, but because of what's just happened, they all just get rejected straight away. So he goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum to go see Doctor Strange and asks him, like, is there any way you could help me? Like, it's not just my life being ruined because people know who Spider-Man is. It's his girlfriend, it's his friends, it's his auntie, it's, you know, anyone that's been ever associated with him are getting hounded about who he is. You know, can you help me? So he's like, actually, there is something we can do. There is a spell that we can cast that we can make people forget what happens. Wong's also there, who's now the Sorcerer Supreme, because of during the snap, Stephen Strange wasn't around, so now he's taken over. But Stephen sort of feels like he's a bit lost, like he doesn't know what to do. He wants that level back where he is, but he just sort of feels like he's not quite sure what to do. So Wong kind of, you know, just says, don't involve me in this. He portals away somewhere. Who knows? Maybe to Shang-Chi, because he pays in there. So he decides, I'll help you. I'll help the world forget who Spider-Man is. He's happy with that, but as he starts to think about it, he's like, actually, no. Can you at least leave MJ so she knows and then, you know, he's casting the spell while this is going on, and then he keeps throwing in these things like, no, what about this? Actually, if this happens, what about this? What about this? As he's having to recast and redo the spell, all he's doing is putting layers on layers on layers. When he finally does cast it, it looks like it works, but you can tell in Stephen Strange's face that it just feels off, that it hasn't worked. Sends it out there, and then it feels like moments later, Peter goes and to talk to someone from one of the universities to ask for like a second chance for his friends. But she's on a motorway at this point, going to the airport. Gets talking to her, and that's when we get the first sort of ripple effect of what's just happened, where he just out of nowhere, Doc Ock turns up, the original Doc Ock from Spider-Man 1, to fight Peter, which is a strange fight because he doesn't realise that this isn't his Spider-Man for quite a while, even though he's wearing a different suit and is in a different area to probably where he just was. It sort of takes him a little while to start to come to the conclusion that this isn't going on. He's still got his iron suit on at this point. Doc Ock overpowers him, rips it apart, so the nanotech infuses with him, and when that happens, he's like, this isn't my world, you're not my Peter, because he can see him at this point. He goes back up to the top to try to figure out, like, where the hell am I? What's going on here? Just as that happens, we hear the cackle from the Green Goblin and a pumpkin bomb come rolling down, which you saw in the trailer. I'll put some picture if I can find it. And then, just before that blows up, Spider-Man and Doc Ock get pulled through Doctor Strange portal into the bottom of the Sanctum Sanctorum. They've trapped Doc Ock. Spider-Man's there, and just like, what's going on? And Stephen Strange is like, something's gone awry. When I cast the spell, it wasn't a spell to forget who Peter Parker is. It's also brought in from the multiverse people who know who Peter Parker is, that he is Spider-Man. So this is when we get sort of a lot going into like the next 10 minutes of Peter being given. He's lost his nanotech at this point, so he had to get one of his old suits, and Doctor Strange give him this little thing that if he ever finds one of these anomalies, he can press summit and it'll bring him and that person back to the Sanctum. So he goes out looking. By this time, Ned and Zendaya's turned up because they need somewhere to stay, and Stephen Strange, at this point, he's sort of like, he's got other problems and other things he wants to do, so he just tells the kids to Scooby-Doo that. And Zendaya kind of gives him a lot of back talk, because that's what she does quite a lot. She talks down to like every adult because she's a teenager and knows better, which is just another one of those off-putting things. There were people in the audience that sort of laughed and things. I was just sort of like, nah, you don't talk down to someone who literally saved the entire world. And I'm almost certain that Peter would have told his friends of the sacrifice Doctor Strange did to remedy everything that happened, because he was on that planet when everything went down. So I'm sure he would have said, like, if it wasn't for this guy doing this, none of this would be here right now. But, you know, they're kids, they know better. So they're helping out now. So he's got his little team behind him, helping track him. I think Ned's sort of tracking social media and things going on. And Zendaya, you know, they're both sort of looking around. There's a lot of product placement for TikTok in this film, which I don't think will age very well. Come back to this film in like 10 years, you might be like, what the hell's TikTok? It's like, oh, it's an old thing kids did for attention. So they'd gone hunting, looking for anomalies. He'd gone out purposely looking for this goblin person because he felt like felt the energy of this person. So he ends up stumbling across in the woods Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Sandman from Spider-Man 3, and they both instantly kind of realise that this isn't the place they're supposed to be. Like Electro, he says that out loud, like, I'm, you know, where am I? I feel different. The energy of this area, this world feels different, and he likes it. Like, he's like, oh, but he also realises he looks different. Probably because Jamie Foxx couldn't be bothered playing that character and that role again, so he's playing Jamie Foxx. And Sandman knows quite straight away that he's not where he's supposed to be, and he also aligns with Spider-Man, because at the end of Spider-Man 3 he'd kind of repented what he'd done and come to the conclusion that, you know, Spider-Man's actually a good person. So he's initially helping Spider-Man out, but he knows that it's not his Spider-Man, but he knows to help. But as always with Sandman, he seems to be quite easily influenced. They have a fight back and forth, but they both get sucked into the Sanctorum. At this point, also, it seems Stevens also caught the Lizard from the first Amazing Spider-Man film, which he looks pretty much the same. And I wasn't quite sure if it was I think it's Rhys Evans at first, because the voice sounded a little bit different. So it might be for the fact that he hadn't played that character in 10 years maybe at this point. So at first I thought they'd just CGI'd someone, because CGI'd someone different, look wise, and got a different voice that's similar enough. So he managed to get almost everyone apart from the Goblin, which we cut back to, and the Goblin's in an alleyway. Willem Dafoe's talking to himself again in that kind of Gollum Schmeagol type thing, where the voice of the Goblin is talking to him through the mask. And Willem Dafoe he's one of the highlights of this film. He's kind of like, no, I can't do this, and he knows he's somewhere different. He knows it shouldn't be there, and he's like, it's all Spider-Man's fault. It's always Spider-Man's fault. But he ends up sort of being placed quite close to where Aunt May sort of helps out her shelter, and he goes, he kind of instinctively goes there. Kind of, I don't know how, but he ends up just stumbling into there and sort of muttering, talking about Peter Parker or Spider-Man or something, which causes Aunt May to call Peter and be like, oh, someone's here. I think someone that you're looking for is here. So he goes to see him, and at this point it's more of the subdue sort of Willem Dafoe Osborne. Which Osborne is he? Not Harry Osborne. Osborne. I will just go with Osborne while I try to remember. It's kind of that sort of repent stage that he gets, where he'd get that now and again with Spider-Man 1, but you'd always have that inkling in the back of your mind, like, is he just playing along with this? Like, he's got that split personality where it's like, is it him? Is it not him? Is he playing along? But this Peter Parker doesn't know any different. And he sort of takes him under his wing and is like, okay, well, I know how I can help you. I can send you back to where you're supposed to be if you come with me. And he seemed like he might be himself, his actual self. Takes him to the Sanctum Sanctorum. And when he's walking in there, Doc Ock looks at him and he's like, Norman, that's it, there we go. Oof, remember, Norman, like, it's you. And they know each other because they're both scientists. I think I'm a scientist myself. And have a bit of a back and forth. He's like, how can you be here? And he's like, I don't know where I am. I don't know how I can be here. He's like, no, you shouldn't be here. This is the biggest anomaly here because you died years ago. To him, between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, a couple of years has passed by then. And it's like, Doc Ock will know of the death of Osborne, Norman Osborn. The world probably doesn't know he was the Green Goblin at that time. So he's just like, I shouldn't be here. And that's when it starts to unravel that these guys were pulled into this world when they were about to die. And knowing that, Doctor Strange is like, we're going to send you back. We're going to send you back. And it's like, they're going to be sent back to their deaths. Like, we can't do this. So that's when Spider-Man and Doctor Strange start to have a bit of a falling out, because, Doctor Strange just wants to just get rid of him and just, make sure this spell just, is over before any more damage happens. But Spider-Man and his little gang of friends are like, no, we can't send these people back. Like, we're gonna send them to the deaths. And he's feeling kind of sorry for, especially Norman Osborn, because he looks very vulnerable and very sort of broken at this point. So he decides that, like, I can help you guys. Waits for Doctor Strange to go, and then he takes them back to Happy's place, where Happy's got a lot of Stark tech sort of hidden away. So he's like, oh, I know, we can do this. We can science this and figure out a way to, make you all better. Like cure you from your ailments. Like, Doc Ock has the claws. Well, not claws, but he has the tentacles that kind of control him, because in Spider-Man 3, the chip that he had implanted that helped his mind control the tentacles, I think during a fight or something, exploded. So now the tentacles have their own mind each and tend to overpower him to make him do bad things. and then he was thinking of, we can make a cure for the lizard, because I think he said he knows how to do that. That might be later actually. But he's like, I can help you guys. Like, I can drain the power out of Electro and Sandman. We can, he's trying to be really good and trying to use his science mind, which is the first time we'd seen Tom Holland's Peter Parker actually do anything scientific, other than the beginning, where the first time we'd seen him, where we know he's made his own suit, made his own webbing. We've never seen him actually use this scientific mind. He's always, taken apart and done things from Tony's suits that he's been given, but he's never really made or tinkered and done stuff much himself. So it was quite nice seeing that, and the interactions between Doc Ock and Norman Osborn, where they're both helping out and doing things, is great. He ends up making a cure for Norman, and that's when the Goblin mind switches, and he's like, no, you're not doing this to me. Fight ensues. They all escape, apart from Doc Ock, who he did help, and he's the only one that's there, but he disappeared as well. But he's the only one that's potentially like maybe a good guy right now. When all this is going on, the goblins, everything, it comes back to him, and he ends up killing Aunt May. And while she's dying, she gives Peter his classic line of, with great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man's distraught at this point and just runs off, just goes somewhere. And then we cut back to, I can't remember what Ned and Zendaya and MJ were doing, but somehow they're at Ned's house. He'd stolen I can't remember the ring, but it's the ring that goes over Doctor Strange's fingers that he ends up doing the things with. And Ned's doing things with his hands, and you can just see in the background these little flickers going on, and then he's like, oh, maybe. And he's thinking about things like, well, what does Doctor Strange do? He thinks about like going somewhere else, does a circle, and then he's there. He's like, well, maybe that might help for people. So he does a few things and it works, because why not? Why not have Ned become a superhero as well? Everyone else can be, everyone gets one, everyone's special. And he ends up like thinking like, oh, where's Peter? We need to find Peter. He's not answering his phone, not doing anything. They cast a spell where, find me Peter Parker. They'll cast a spell, and then they see someone, and he's down a rainy alleyway. It's like, and Zendaya's like, oh, Peter. Someone comes walking through. Andrew Garfield. In the audience, some people are like, huh? There were people there that didn't know Andrew Garfield played as Spider-Man. I could hear dads talking to kids, and it's like, how do you not know? How do you not know? I think some people are just fed a diet of MCU films, and that's all they know, which is quite sad, which is why the comic book industry sells little to no comics anymore, because kids are interacting with this thing, they're just interacting with screens. So we get a bit of back and forth and playfulness, because they're like, you're not Peter Parker. He's like, I'm Peter Parker. He's even got his Spider-Man suit on, and he's taken his mask off. So it's like, they might think he's just a cosplayer or something, and he had to prove himself to be Spider-Man. So they try to cast that thing again, and then another figure walks through, this time Tobey Maguire, a very, very old-looking Tobey Maguire now, very sort of thinly gaunt. He definitely looks more of his age now than he would back then. He definitely looks a guy within his 40s, comes through, and they're like, you're not another Peter Parker, are you? And he's like, yeah. So they have a bit of a back and forth. And then they try to like, where, if it was me and I needed to go somewhere, I had this place. And Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man's like, oh, I had this place. And then they ask, where would your Spider-Man go? So it's at the school, on the roof of the school. They all go, and they're talking, and then you see all the two spiders come together, and they all have a bit of a chat, talking about what they've done wrong, people they've lost, things they've overcome, and it's kind of a big bonding session for all of them to come together to sort of be like, it's for the first time for each individual one of them, they know that there's someone else out there that's gone through something really similar to them, not just in their sort of realm, but another Spider-Man, and it's kind of comforting to them. And the way them three play off each other is brilliant. We then go into the science lab, where they start to think of making cures for the other guys. So the Sandman, I think Tobey Maguire's helping that. Andrew's doing the cure for the lizard, and I think they're trying to make another cure again for Norman, because he smashed his up before he went mental and did all his other stuff. And that's when we get the big final conclusion fight at the rebuilt Statue of Liberty, now with a giant Captain America shield, which looks really strange, like not great strange, just really weird. But we get just great fight scenes, great moments between each character, trying to figure things out, because in this world, the other two Spider-Men hadn't teamed up, hadn't done anything. Like I want to say our Spider-Man, but the MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland, is sort of saying, you know, when I've done this and worked with who, and they're kind of like, what's an Iron Man? What's a Hulk? What's Captain America? You know, and sort of joking like, you've been to space, and you know, Andrew Garfield like, I fought a guy in a rhino suit and things like that. There were a lot of really fun back and forth between all three guys, and there was just something really like, I know I had a stupid grin on my face. Them final bits when all Spider-Men were coming together, they were having to try to plan and work around and work as a cohesive team, because they're probably, a lot of them are used to working by themselves, and you know, they help, you know, they figure it all out. You know, they beat the bad guys. But the biggest thing that they're trying to get at is that Tom Holland's Spider-Man just has this really bad pent-up aggression, which the other two have overcome at this point. They've both gone through this massive stage of grief where they've gone out and maybe beat someone up a bit too much, maybe gone a bit too far. Never, you know, to the point of no return, but they've gone to the point where they could have, but they've pulled themselves back. Whereas this Tom Holland feels like he's at that stage. So there's a final fight scene with the Goblin and Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and he's just punching him, wailing on him, just going just too much. And he grabs his glider and he's about to just slam it straight through him, reminiscent of, you know, Spider-Man 1, but instead of Norman bringing it into himself, it would have been Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man this time. But Tobey Maguire stops him and just sort of looks at him, just saying, you don't want to do this, you don't want to go too far. And while this is going on, the world around him is starting to rip and tear. Doctor Strange is here, and he's on top of the Statue of Liberty, just sort of pulling it all together, trying to like stop things from coming through. And there's slivers going on with, and you can see silhouettes of things that are wanting to come through. I saw the silhouette for the Rhino, but I didn't see any other things. I was trying to look, which is why I think a second viewing, potential Blu-ray buy, I'll be pausing to look and try to see, like, oh, we're looking like, is there a black cat there? Is there a Kraven the Hunter? Is there a Madam Web in there? Like all these different Spider-Man things we'd seen. But he's trying to stop everything while they're trying to, you know, basically just cure the final guy to send them back. Which they do. They do send them back, but they don't say they're going to send them back, you know, to like a different spot within their lives. Like they're all cured and get sent back, but we'll just talk about that after I've rounded up the finish of this film. So in the end, I'll just say Tom Holland Spider-Man because there's too many Peters. He says to Strange, like, look, we'll just do the original spell, just do it. Everyone, just forget everything, and that includes Doctor Strange. And he's like, but everyone that loves you will forget, and he includes himself at this point because he kind of forgiven him and got over the little spats they've had, because there's always been a little bit of a back and forth between them, even in the other films where it's kind of like Spider-Man's maybe a bit too casual with Doctor Strange, but by the end he's sort of like, you can't, it's fine. And he's like, no, it needs to happen. And this is the first time that we're getting the Tom Holland Spider-Man like stepping up and being like, I will bear the responsibility of this, and whatever happens, it's all on me. It's all on me. So he casts the spell and he gets to say his goodbyes to the other two Peters that have a really good sort of moment together before they sort of just disintegrate and float away. And then he speaks to Ned and Zendaya, and Zendaya's just like, no, I'll never forget. We'll never forget. I can't forget. We'll meet each other again, and I'll make it. Peter's like, I'll make you remember. You will remember. And then he sort of swings away, and then it cuts to like, I think it's a little bit later, a couple of months maybe, or a week or so. And he goes to where Zendaya works. She works at a coffee and donut shop. And he sort of, as he's walking in, he's going in there, and he's got like this thing in his hand. And he's like, oh, hi, I'm Peter Parker. And he's got this speech written out that he's going to tell her, hoping to like maybe trigger like a memory. Because she doesn't even know that she went to school with him. She forgot like who Peter Parker is completely. Not just the fact that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, just that even Peter Parker exists. So no one knows. Happy doesn't remember that he dated Aunt May, that Peter Parker was part of his life with Tony. No one has ever known of Spider-Man, which is quite a lot for him, because he's completely alone by this point. He doesn't have an Uncle Ben, he doesn't have an Aunt May, he doesn't have Happy, he doesn't have his girlfriend, doesn't have Ned, doesn't have Doctor Strange, doesn't have the Avengers. He can't go to Avengers Tower to sort of just grieve or talk to them. He's completely alone. So he goes to Zendaya's shop to try to talk to her, but she instantly doesn't recognise him, and she's just sort of being a casual self to him. Not a snarky self this time. She sort of seems a bit more warmer and human. So maybe Strange doing something to her maybe made her nicer. Ned comes in, they're talking with each other, they find out that they both got into university together, and Tom Holland's Peter Parker is kind of just sort of stepping back, watching them interact, and it kind of dawns on him like, no, I'm not gonna reveal everything now. And he kind of has a bit of a flirt with MJ, and she kind of acknowledges it back, and there's that little glimmer there that maybe something might happen. And then he walks out, cuts to him in a grungy looking apartment now, similar to the apartment we got for Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2 and 3. That kind of, it looks like it's had about 85 different coats of paint on, and they're all chipping off that kind of grey, not rotten, but kind of chipping off paint. Things don't quite look right, but he's there. And then it cuts to him out running in the snow, and we're only getting glimmers and little looks of this silhouette. And then, but it looks like he's got a brand new suit, and it's a suit he's made for himself, and it looks like he's taken inspiration from his two counterparts, because it looks like we've now finally got Tom Holland's Spider-Man in a real homemade full Spider-Man suit. And it cuts back to the sewing machine with the sort of red fabric and blue fabric as he starts to swing and do stuff, and that's where it ends. And I think it's a really good jumping off point, because we're finally getting that, what they call themselves, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man each to each other. But it finally feels like what we might get next from Tom Holland's Spider-Man, if it's going to be Tom Holland, if Sony back up a big enough truck full of money, which is what it feels like he's trying to get at. Or maybe he just wants a couple of years off from playing Spider-Man to go play Nathan Drake. But I think we're going to get another trilogy. They're definitely going to be working. Kevin Feige has already said they're working on the next Spider-Man 4 film, and there was rumblings that it's going to be another trilogy. And I'd like to see that being that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, not going off into space, not doing things with Avengers constantly. That is that grounded, New York-based crime-fighting guy, and that's when we might see maybe this version of Harry Osborne come into it, because we need a Green Goblin or a Hobgoblin in Spider-Man's world. Even though he's fought one, he'll know. But even just seeing like the Scorpion or Lizard, or even like for me, I'd love to see Kraven in there for like the Kraven Last Hunt storyline, where he's done all these things and he wants to come hunt the Spider of New York and things. We also got a glimpse in the credits of we got Venom with Tom Hardy, sort of at a bar with Tom Hardy with his usual Eddie Brock, greasy, beat up, dirty looking Eddie Brock, drinking, trying to talk about, they've been brought here. There's a Spider-Man, there's an Avengers, there's a Hulk. It's a scene played for laughs, but it's atrocious. But as everything's going on in the world and all the people that get pulled out of the world, that new Spider-Man, he goes. But on the desk, on the countertop of the bar, there's a little bit of the Venom suit left, which starts to crawl and move away. So that sort of leads into the fact that the next Spider-Man film, maybe not the next Spider-Man film, but it's leading to the fact that Venom is now in this world and knows about Spider-Man in New York. So it'll be about him trying to make his way from South America, I think they were in Mexico, South America, up to New York. So that's where the future might go. After these films, I'd quite like to see the other guys get some more films. Right? No, I know Amazing Spider-Man 2 wasn't great, but I've always liked Andrew Garfield, and the Andrew Garfield we got in this is very much where he felt like in the comics for me, because he'd started his own company at this point in the comics called Parker Industries, which I think was either taken over or was part of the Future Foundation, the Fantastic Four thing. So he had his own science lab where he was making his own suits. That he'd started to get an array of suits similar to like Iron Man at this point, but by then he's like in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. So I won't mind seeing the next, an Andrew Garfield film set then in his world, where we're seeing the actual scientist Spider-Man building and doing things, because it did look like and it felt like that character that I read in all those long 200 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. And also we got, if we get into Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire, with the stage at life he's at, it still feels like him and MJ aren't quite working it out. But you could go into that world. I'm sure Kirsten Dunst would come back, but you could play that role of Spider-Man being a mentor for someone else, maybe his daughter. If you really want to bring in Miles Morales, you could probably do it there or somewhere. I quite like the Miles storyline to stay in the animated universe, because I think that style suits that character a lot more. They do make a snip at it within this film, but I roll my eyes because I don't like Miles. I started while reading the Ultimate Universe. That's where Miles is. Never got him. He always just felt like someone wearing a Spider-Man suit because he wanted to be Spider-Man and happened to have all these things happen to him that made him a Spider-Man. But I'd rather not see. I don't think we've got a proper, complete Spider-Man yet before we're like, let's go to Miles, because we've got all these other people from the atrocious, all new, all different Marvel, which is where the comic. That's where I dropped off the comics, when they brought out all new, all different, where it was sort of the counterparts of the original heroes. So we'd get, the Miss Marvel, the horrible Miss Marvel, and American Chavez, just all these B-grade, low-tier crap characters were brought in at the forefront, while all the ones we all know and love were pulled back. And it's sort of like, I gave up reading comics then and collecting them, because they were sort of like, these are, when I was first reading them, by this time I was sailing the high seas to read PDFs of them. I was like, they don't even read like the original characters. When Captain America or Wolverine or anyone were in the book, or Iron Man, it was sort of like, who are these now? It just feels like some weird clone with a different personality. So I'm hoping we kind of get the next set of Spider-Man films in the MCU. If it's still tied in there, we don't know yet, that we get that actual scientific Spider-Man. We know he's going to college at this point. You could even time jump a couple of years, because the way this is laid out, you can't tell where it is in the MCU, and everything's a bit wonky time-wise there now with like, when's anything taking place? So you could jump a little to like the next time we see him. He could already be like working in a lab while finishing off his last year of university. You could even bring in Black Cat at this point as like another love interest rather than MJ. You could even bring in Mary Jane, because this MJ isn't Mary Jane. Who is she? What is she? I can't remember. I don't care. But you could even bring in MJ, which might make him think like, oh, I've known an MJ, or like, something like that. But there's countless storylines, characters, and where the world that Spider-Man could go yet before having to do a reboot or bring in a token replacement of Spider-Man, whether it's bringing in another one from the Into the Spider-Verse, bringing in like Spider-Gwen or something like that, rather than it just being a not Peter Parker Spider-Man before bringing anyone else in. I'd love to see a fully rounded Spider-Man that's not just a kid. I want to see an adult Spider-Man. So hopefully we get to see something like that in the future. I know this has been a long video. There might be some of you out there that kind of can sort of feel like I did, who've maybe grown up with Spider-Man, collected the comics, and sort of grown with Spider-Man, and know the sort of anything that's not just a film, not just MCU, like someone who's spent a lot of time with that character and can kind of see where I'm coming from, which is why I wanted to sort of break this video into 3 parts. I'll try and put the chapters in, but because this channel's so new, I don't think I can do that marking thing yet. So I know it's been a long video. For those of you that stuck along, thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts below. If you think I've got something wrong, or I might be coming from a different angle, let me know. I'm always open to like re-evaluating my thoughts and things, and maybe re-watching a film from a slightly different perspective to pick up on a different angle. But I'm very hopeful for what we're going to get from the future of Spider-Man, as someone who did spend pretty much all of his 20s and late teenage years buying and reading Marvel, specifically Marvel comics. I feel like the future of Spider-Man's great, whether that's we get Spider-Man 4 for Tobey Maguire, whether that's we get an Andrew Garfield 3 to redeem and maybe finish that off, as like, you know, whether these, you know, some of these could be on Disney Plus as well. We don't have to talk about everything being a film here. Like, these could be Disney Plus things or something else to supplement, you know, the world if we like it. I'm sure some of these guys would come back with a little bit of incentive, but I'm also like I'm sort of a bit more enthused about the future of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or this version of Peter Parker. You know, if Tom doesn't want to come back and we bring Peter Parker into another film for Spider-Man, you know, the second trilogy from Marvel, that's when you could perfectly get another actor who's a few years older, might look a bit older, because Tom's only a short guy. He's as tall as me, and he's got a baby face, which I would if I'd shaved my face. So he can only look a certain age, really, because of his height and his baby face. So, you know, if Tom don't want to play ball, then you can always recast someone else, and then the next time we see Spider-Man, it could be in that same suit, in that same universe, but he's just, you know, he's a scientist now. He's just finished university and he's just started temping and working out from the bottom from a scientist, even if it's like the future foundation for Fantastic Four, which are going to be enveloped and pulled into the MCU. Like, there's loads and loads of opportunities what you could do with Peter Parker and Spider-Man next. If you have any suggestions that I haven't thought about or haven't said, put them in the comments. I'll be reading them. I will reply back. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Do all the algorithm stuff. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.